Hello, my name is Michael Rowe. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Physiotherapy at the University of the Western Cape in Cape Town, South Africa. Today I'm going to share some of my thoughts about the integration of technology into the classroom. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the benefits of technology. I think at this point it's hard to deny that online and blended learning environments have an important role to play in 21st century education. But rather, the purpose of this talk is to share some of what I've learned about the challenges that I faced in integrating technology. In particular, some of the choices that we make about how technology is used. I think I'll start just by suggesting that the dominant use of technology in the classroom is to improve effectiveness and cost efficiency. We use it for content distribution by uploading our lecture notes, our PowerPoint presentations, recorded lectures. We share these things in online environments and then we tell students to go and access them. This is very useful when we are trying to save money, but it's not particularly useful when it comes to improving the relationship that we have with students. And I think at this point I should probably emphasize that I really believe that teaching and learning is fundamentally about forming a relationship, a learning relationship between teachers and students. And I think that when we make choices about how we integrate technology into the classroom, we need to ask what the technology is doing to enhance and support the relationships that we have with students. I think we need to begin by asking what is the problem that we're trying to solve by bringing technology into the classroom. I think too often the choice to include technology is made purely on a cost efficiency basis. So we're told that this is something that we need to do in order to save money, but if saving money comes at a cost of harming the relationship that we have with students and harming the pedagogical environment, then we need to ask difficult questions about who's making those decisions about how we bring technology into the classroom. Now, obviously, I'm not against bringing technology in the classroom. In fact, I use a lot of technology in my own classroom all the time, but I think that technology must be used to solve an educational problem that is difficult or impossible to solve without the technology. So, for example, one of the ways that we can use technology is to bring international lecturers into our classrooms, and not just as recorded lectures like we're doing here, but to actually have students and international experts engage in real time, where students can ask questions. I think this is an enormously powerful way of using technology. Another way that I've had a lot of success with is bringing international student cohorts together, where they work on problems either in real time or across asynchronously, so separated by time as well as space. But we get students to work together on clinical case studies, and we get students engaging with each other, having really insightful conversations about the local health systems and the ways that the social norms and professional norms of practice in different countries. And I think that this can be a very powerful learning experience. I think that technology can and should be used to enhance self-directed learning, but I think often this relates, or often this is interpreted by lecturers as just giving students access to the resources and then telling them to come back in 3 weeks' time, prepared for the test. I think that when we talk about self-directed learning, the role of the lecturer moves from content provider to facilitator of learning, or a coach. And this can often require that we spend quite a lot more time interacting with students rather than spending less time. So coming back to this idea about cost effectiveness and efficiency, I think moving the learning interaction online, especially for lecturers and students who are not familiar with interacting in this way, it can actually lead to the increased amount of time, especially when we consider that a lot of the feedback we give students is written, and we type faster than we speak. So feedback in the classroom context can actually be more efficient than when we do it online. Tied to the idea of self-directed learning is just the provision of content. I think that open educational resources are an important and powerful way for students to learn. I think the quality and the quantity of OERs has exploded in the last decade, but this has actually made it more difficult for students to engage in self-directed learning, especially when the lecturer doesn't narrowly constrain the learning resources. Now, I think one of the powerful lessons that we can teach in online and blended learning environments is to teach students to find their own learning resources. So instead of very narrowly constraining what students will use to do their learning, we actually open it up a little bit and we say to students, you go out and you find the learning resources that are most effective for your learning. But before we can do that, we need to teach students how to identify credible resources. So instead of saying, well, you're not allowed to use Wikipedia, let's rather teach students how to identify the articles on Wikipedia that are worth paying attention to and which ones can be safely ignored. I think this is a far more powerful and valuable lesson if you consider that once they graduate, there's no one telling the students what resources they should use to improve their professional practice. So while we are integrating technology in the classroom, let's also teach students how to search, filter, aggregate, synthesize, and identify meaningful educational resources. I think that this can be quite a powerful lesson that we can use, or that students can learn, as we empower them for their own personal learning. As we move into online spaces, I think that we need to be careful about the way that we think about student data. Every online interaction leaves an audit trail, and I think we need to give students control over how that data is used. If we think about the fact that a lot of corporate platforms are increasingly used in educational spaces, for example, Facebook groups, this can be very powerful for students learning, but Facebook has ultimate control over what happens with that data. There's no way for students to move that data out of Facebook to build their own personal learning portfolio, which might be valuable when they're applying for jobs after they graduate. Even if we think about the institutional learning management system, we often delete students' assignments and learning interactions, conversations, forum discussions, once they graduate, once they move on to the next module or the next year level. So even using the institutional learning management system, we see that students don't have control over their own data or how that data is used. My own preference is to use open source software which would enable students to move the data outside of the learning environment once they graduate. This gives them control over their future learning. We say that students must be lifelong learners, but then we take away the means that they have to take that foundational knowledge that they built during their first 3 or 4 years of their curriculum. We take it away from them by keeping the control and by deleting their interactions. Wouldn't it be better to have students, or give students the ability to take their interactions out of the learning environment and use that to build a basis, a foundation for their professional development over their careers? I think just touching on that, I think we need to teach students how to be online. So it's all very well to say, let's give students opportunities to engage in online environments. But if we abdicate our moral responsibility to give students the tools to learn how to be professional in online spaces, then I think this can be problematic. We think about the private conversations that students have in between classes, in the kind of social spaces on campus. They have private conversations about patients, about lecturers, about clinicians, about institutions where they work. And I think this is all very well, it's not a problem. But when they start having those conversations in public spaces, or spaces that they believe to be private but which may become public, for example, when there are data breaches, I think we need to be careful about the way that we encourage students to have online conversations. And this is not to restrict the nature of those conversations, but rather to give students the tools to learn about personal and professional identity, what it means to be professional in public, and especially in public online spaces. I think this is quite important. And this brings me to another point, which is that just because there may be evidence that we can do things online, that we can move the full degree into an online space, I think it's not necessarily true that we should. if we think about the hidden curriculum, which describes the thousands of unplanned interactions that happen in the course of the 4 years between lecturers and students, and between students themselves, that inform the way that students think about their personal and professional identities. What happens when we move the full curriculum into an online space? And because it's only the formal curriculum that moves online, we've got no way of articulating the hidden curriculum in an online environment. What will we lose? What opportunities for serendipitous learning and discovery will we lose when we move the entire curriculum into an online space just because technologically we can? And so I think we need to be careful when we're making decisions about how we integrate technology in the classroom. And just because we can doesn't mean that we should. It comes back to the point that I made right at the very beginning, where I said we need to be sure that we're solving some pedagogical problem, that we're not moving the curriculum into an online space purely because we can. I think I want to end by quoting Paulo Freire, who said that there is no such thing as a neutral educational process. Every decision that we make about the curriculum has an implicit political signal that we're sending to students. We are using the curriculum to send signals to students about what we value and what we say is important. And I think when we make decisions about the technology that we use in the classroom, we need to be very clear about what signals we're sending to students. Are we doing this because of effectiveness and cost efficiency? Or are we moving technology into the curriculum to enhance and support the learning interactions that we have with students? Are we using technology to develop learning relationships that we have with students? So I think we need to be very careful when we put technology into the curriculum and make sure that the use of the technology aligns with the things that we say we care about when it comes to student learning. So on that point, I'm going to end. I want to thank Anna Maria from the Federal University of Minas Gerais for the kind opportunity that she gave me to share some of my thoughts about curriculum and technology in physiotherapy education. I hope that this has been interesting and hopefully useful to the audience, and I wish you all the best for the rest of your conference. Thank you very much.